co-author Sarah Hogan from the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research, and she joins us now. Sarah, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
Thank you. Hi, Michael.
Listen, you were the co-author of this, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So what motivated you, or the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research in specific, I guess, to inquire into the big question is, do we have fit-for-purpose teachers teaching in our classrooms? What inspired you to inquire into that issue?
You're right that this research was done under our public good program. So this was a topic that NZIER felt that was in the interests of New Zealanders. People want to know what's going on with the education sector. And we think it is an important economic issue because there's a direct link between education and productivity. And in particular, in areas of productivity growth, it's often the case that maths and science skills are particularly important. I also have personal motivation. I've got 3 children who've been through the education sector in New Zealand. Luckily, they're at the other side of that now. I did spend some time as a teacher myself, as a secondary maths teacher. And so it's a topic that's really relevant and important, I think, to a lot of us.
Okay, so that motivates you to get into the search. But the remarkable thing is that, as you point out, in 2022, the government funds schools to the tune of nearly $8 billion. And yet your argument has that standards have dropped off significantly over the last 20 years, and particularly measurable, particularly in terms of international rankings and the like. Our PISA maths results, our PISA science results you highlight in the report. But then you go on to, and this is the most remarkable aspect of it, saying, well, you've got to look at who's teaching, particularly at primary school levels, from years 0 to 8, and are they equipped to do the job? And then you look at these teachers coming into the profession from, was it 2017 to 2022? You're talking about new primary teachers who've trained at our teachers' colleges.
Yes, that's where we focused. We did look a little bit further back as well, but as you know, it's a bit complicated with NCEA because over time things changed. And so if you do look at NCEA results over a long period of time, it's possible that you're observing differences just because there were changes in requirements over that period of time. So to get really robust results, we focused on a relatively short period of time during which we could not see any obvious changes in the NCEA requirements. But one of the reasons that we dug into the way teachers performed when they were students themselves is because the solution that's often proposed to the well-known problem, I think there's a lot of evidence showing that teachers lack skills and confidence in maths at the primary level. One of the solutions that's often proposed is that during their tertiary education, when they do their teacher training, they could have a little bit of a refresher in maths. And that would actually be fine if they'd just forgotten a little bit of their maths over the years. But the question is, have they actually forgotten it, or is it possible that they were never really very good at it in the first place, that they never really learned, and that there are actually substantial gaps in their knowledge? And so that's why we felt it was really important to dig back into their own learning. And the other reason was that when people have had really negative experiences of learning, they've experienced a lot of failure, they've been, in bottom classes and things like that, they might have quite a negative attitude towards the subject. So there could be a lot of anxiety, or they may feel it's not important or not relevant and seek to avoid it.
And, well, that's been noted, I think, by the Education Review Office, which you've probably read their reports as well, making exactly that connection, that many primary school teachers feel uncomfortable teaching maths and science because, as you've pointed out, they're not something they enjoyed, liked, or particularly proficient at themselves. Yours is the first report to take that subjective view and put some objectivity behind it. And you've looked at level 1, which is the most basic of the NCEA levels over the period 2017 to 22. You've looked at aspiring primary teachers and whether or not they got a merit or an excellence endorsement. Now, I have to be honest with you, having had children...
We actually looked at whether they even got an achieved endorsement.
That's right, you did both, didn't you?
Yeah.
And what was... Okay, so for English, maths and science, what did you find?
So we found that For English, 14% did not get the achieved endorsement at level 1. So that's 1 in 6, roughly. We found that 25% did not get the achieved endorsement in maths at level 1, and 58% did not get the achieved endorsement in science at level 1.
So in other words, they sat those subjects at NCEA level 1s
yes,
between...
this is out of the ones who actually attempted. And most students will have to attempt them because they are compulsory. So it would be quite exceptional circumstances, or it would be perhaps in a school where they don't do level 1 and they just come straight into level 2. But these rates, these failure rates, are out of the students who did attempt.
Yes, and that's just the point I was going to make. My local school, for example, Sarah, they teach something called Otago Maths, and I'm not sure if they teach Otago English, but it's an even lesser standard than an NCEA.
Right.
You're aware of that?
I'm not aware of Otago Maths, no.
Oh, okay. No, it's just that so in actual fact, you sort of can get around it by having lesser standards involved. But you're saying, no, these people sat the standard basic for NCEA level 1. They sat actually English, they sat maths, they sat science, and they failed. So how on earth do they end up teaching these subjects in front of classrooms in New Zealand?
Yeah, so that's the thing with NCEA. So it's rather complicated, as most people will know who have had children going through. It's not necessary to have got an achieved level endorsement in any particular subject to gain general UE. So the thing with an achieved level endorsement is it requires you not just to get 14 credits in a subject, but you actually have to have got at least 3 of those credits from an external exam. You can't do it on an internals only route. And there's good reason for that, right? You think about the internals are purely managed within the school. The assessment is written by the teacher. It's then assessed by the teacher. Everything takes place in front of the teacher. And so there's some possibility there for gaming within the school to get those results that the school wants to see. So NZQA has quite reasonably said if you want an achieved level endorsement in a subject, you've got to show that you can do at least one external achievement standard, at least one exam that will be externally assessed.
So I could
but
choose...
For UE, you don't actually have to have achieved that.
Right. So what you're saying is UE is a rather easy examination to get, to pass. I can game the system.
That's correct. Years ago, UE used to actually require students to have done external exams. But I imagine with the number of students that schools have been allowing to go through NCEA without doing externals, while that's dropped, universities have been forced to drop their standards as well to be able to keep numbers up.
Now, I'm also assuming that if I fail maths and science at NCEA level 1, I will not be taking it at NCEA level 2, which means that I can now concentrate on other subjects that will get me my UE pass. Is that correct? Like, I don't know, psychology or photography.
I think it would be fair to say that would probably be the typical decision of a student who would have failed level 1 maths or science. They would probably not be strongly motivated to attempt level 2, but I think that's up to the individual schools, and some schools probably do allow students, especially where the circumstances might have been that there had been some illness during their level 1 year, and if the school thinks they are still capable of progressing on to level 2, they can allow them to do that.
Okay, now we're talking about your average 15-year-old basically, 15, 16-year-olds mostly NCEA level 1, and we see that measured obviously in the PISA tests internationally, of which New Zealand hasn't been doing so well lately. But I'm just thinking for primary school teachers, and that was what your study was primarily on, as I understand, primary school teachers, they'll be teaching years, 0 I think they call it these days, but years essentially 0 to 8. Do they need NCEA awareness of NCEA level 1 maths and science really to be able to teach years 0 to 8?
So if you remember a couple of years ago, the Royal Society put together an advisory panel on mathematics and statistics, and it brought together, the country's top academics and experts on maths and stats, pedagogy and curriculum. And they had a big discussion about this. And actually, they did conclude that, yes, teachers do need knowledge many years beyond the level at which they're teaching. And that's just to have the ability to present the subject matter in all the many different ways that are important to help children develop their comprehension. It's also because some children are learning well ahead of the year level that they're at, and you need to be able to support those children as well. And teachers need to understand where children's learning is going to lead them. So they've got to have some knowledge of their sort of learning future, if you want to think about it that way. There was a really interesting debate, in fact, I saw online when one of the articles came up yesterday, and people were saying, well, does this even matter? Because we don't do a lot of maths in primary school. Kids don't actually learn a lot of maths in primary school, which kind of made me laugh, because why do you think that's the case?